Welcome to the Victorian Medallions coaster project. For this project we're going to use the designs from the Victorian Medallion disc, and we've already got that loaded onto our hard disk. So I'm going to open one of the files, and I like the VCMT11 file, but you can use any of the round designs that are on that disk, or you can make a set out of all the designs if you want. So I've opened the design. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to do that by using that menu command, or I could use Control A, and I'm going to group them all by pressing my group button here, and that lets me treat this whole design segment as one element without having to worry about not selecting parts of it. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to resize this. Right now the size is about 3.86 inches, and I need it to be about 3.5 because I want that to fit into a 4x4 hoop, and I still need to add a border around it. So I've changed both of my dimensions to 3.5, and my maintain aspect ratio is off, and I'm going to click apply, and that's resized the center of the design to the correct size. The next thing I need to do is I need to add my border circle around it. And I'm going to do that by selecting my ellipse artwork tool, come up here into the corner, and I'm just going to draw a big circle around. And I'm not going to worry too much about the fact that it's a perfect circle or that it's centered at this point, because we're going to make those adjustments right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select that outer circle, come over to my transform, and I need this to be about 3.8 inches. So I'm going to select at 3.8 here, and I did pretty good with the exact size, but 3.8, and I'm going to click apply, and that gets us to 3.8. And the next thing I need to do is make sure that the two elements, the circle and the design, are centered. I'm going to do that by control clicking on the inner element so that now I've got them both selected. Again, I could have gone up and done select all, but there's only two elements right now. I'm going to use my center align button here to make sure that everything is all nice and centered, and that design is right in the center of the circle. The next thing we need to do is we need to convert this circle into an applique to make our border. Now we're not going to actually use an applique, but we're going to use some of the elements of an applique, and so it was just easier to do this using the applique function. So I'm going to select the circle, I'm going to right click and say convert to applique. That gives me a standard applique. It's not exactly what I want, so I'm going to change the applique properties to get exactly what I want. The first thing is I do not need a tack down line because we aren't tacking anything down, so I'm going to uncheck that. And I want to move this satin stitch inwards because I just want a little overlap at the edge of the coaster when we finally make it. So I'm going to change this inset percentage to 90 from 50, and I'm going to click apply, and that's going to do two things. It's going to delete my tack down line, and it's also going to inset my satin stitch the correct amount for when I finally stitch this out. So at this point we're going to save this file because this is going to eventually become the file that we're actually going to stitch out. Now the design is stitched out on black fabric in gold colored thread, but I'm leaving it in this purple thread because I know I can change it on the machine, and also it made it easier for you to see in this video example. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click File, Save As, and I'm going to save this as the VCT11 with border, so I know what this file is, and I'm going to save it in the C2S format. So I'm just going to click return, and that's going to save it. And at this point I would also then save it one more time in my machine stitch format, so I had a file that I can stitch out. Now we need one more file, and that's a file that we're going to use to print our template with, so we can line this up during the stitch out process. And to do that, what we don't need to have in our template file is this satin stitch. Now we could probably leave it because I don't know if you can see this, but our placement line is very, very close to the edge, so we could probably just cut around that edge and inset a little bit. But I'm going to show you how to get rid of this satin stitch and leave the placement line because that's what we really want to cut our template with. I'm going to select it and right click on it, and then I'm going to say break up path, and that separates this placement line from the satin stitch. So now I'm going to select the satin stitch again, and I'm just going to press the delete button to delete that satin stitch. And now I'm going to save this file as my template to print, so I'm going to call that for template, and I'm just going to save that in the C2S format because this is just going to be printed but not sewn. So to print my template, I come up here to my print icon, select print preview. I see that I have everything that I need. I have this line here which will be my cutting line. I have my center lines for lining everything up. Then I would come up here and I would select print and print to my printer, and that would again go on template tearaway so that we could then line it up. And that concludes the software part of this project.